Ancestral home of my husband, there flows a river. For a dozen summers I have visited it, and almost every year I make an effort to trace its course back to its home in the neighboring hills. For I do not regard my vacation there complete without doing that. In common with other streams of its kind, our rivers suffer much from summer heat. I've seen it so shrunken that fishes lay lifeless on the parched sand and gravel of its bed. But this past summer, I noticed something which I never saw before. Had I been sufficiently observant in other abnormal dry years, I am sure I could not have failed to notice the same before. One morning last April, in company with a student friend and my elder son, I started out the hills to spend the day. There by the rapids and cascades at the place called Intongaban. We followed the course of the river. After we had covered a kilometer or more, I observed that the river had disappeared, and only the dry bed was to be seen. I looked around in wonder because past of a little country house and out of the sea half a mile or so away. The river was flowing clear and steadily in its usual summer column and depth. But where we stood the moment, there was no water anywhere to be seen. All about us, the wide river bed was hot and dry. On toward the hills, we pursued our way, and not until we had covered another kilometer did we see the stream again. At the point where it had been spread itself thin, that it was lost at the edge of the waterless stretch of hills, we found the river deeper and stronger than it passed our cottage. To many people, I suppose, there is nothing strange or significant in this. Perhaps they have seen such phenomena more than once before. To me, however, it was a new experience, and it impressed me with the strangeness of all new experiences. But it was not merely strange to me. To me, it was a highly suggested of spiritual truths that can both inspire and impart lessons of considerable value. One of the thoughts that immediately came to my mind was the lesson of determination, flowing down from its cradle in the mountain. Just as it was leaving the last foothills behind, it was checked by the long forbidding stretch of scorching sand. I had read of other streams that upon encountering similar obstacles intuitively lost themselves in the sand or mud. But Bakong, for that is the name of our river, determined to reach the sea, tunneled its way, so to speak, under its sandy bed, choosing of course the harder and lower stratum beneath until, at last, at the end of the long obstacle, it appeared again in limpid light. I thought of men like Galileo, who continued his work long after his sight had failed, of Beethoven, who composed his noblest and sublimest symphonies when already unable to hear a note, of Stevenson, who produced some of his greatest works after he was doomed to die of consumption, and of Cecil Rhodes, who was sent to Africa to die of an incurable disease, but before he obeyed the summons carried off the empire in the dark continent. Those who were resolute and sublime lives all remind us of what our river has taught us, that if we cannot overcome obstacles, we can undercome them. Another thought I gleaned from Bakong lay in the fact that the river was not merely determined to flow just anywhere, but to reach the sea, to reach a great end. Many streams managed to surmount barriers somewhere on their way, but they came out from obstacles after laborious efforts, only to end in a foul and stagnant marsh or lake. How like so many persons who in the springtime of their youth and in summer of their early manhood showed splendid heroism against proning odds, determined to overcome those hostile barriers only in the autumn of their life, to end in defeat, disgrace, and remorse. On other hand, think of other lives that, like a river, kept through the end of their course. I believe it was on our way back from the hills that the lesson of unfaithfulness to duty was forcefully suggested to me. The truth occurred to me that nature often fulfills her duty more faithfully than man does in his own. And what is the duty of a river? It is to furnish safe and running water for plants and fish and fowl and for man and beast. Surely, it is not just flow on and enjoy itself, but to play its part in process of nature, to live. In other words, for the rest of creation. And so it should be the life of my man. It is not to be lived unto itself alone for its own joy and satisfaction, but for others in glad and devoted ministry. And part of the ministering duty of a river is to flow on and on. Otherwise, it will be full and unfit for use. There is danger in standing water, but there is magic in running water. No evil can cross it. Bakong, by continuing its march to the sea, kept itself ready and fit for the service of the nature and man. And not only that, but it extended itself of usefulness. Does this not suggest the river of man's life should do likewise? For if in the face of obstacles, it lacks the strength of will to go, keeping itself ready to serve and seeking new opportunities for service, it will ultimately become useless to others. marveled the power of Bakong to push its way through such seemingly barrier. I believe I have discerned the secret, a secret that may well serve as a message for any man. Here is one of the marvelous secrets of life, and how many have missed it. Verily, if a man derives his strength and inspiration from a low and feeble source, he will fail to arrive, unless man draw his power from source of heavenly altitude and cosmic proportion, unless the stream of his life issues from never-failing source, unless, in other words, his soul is fed from heights of infinitive power, he may well fear that he will not reach the sea. But if his spirit is implied and nourished by exhaustible power from on high, in spite of all obstruction, he will finish his course, if not the glory of dazzling achievement, of least in nobility of complete task faithfully done.